closely held business, the issue that we come about a lot, and I'm sure you see this, is what is their real income coming out of these companies, which is another issue to keep an eye on.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm wondering about, what do we do to basically protect someone from fraud? Or here's a mother who called. What would you do to protect her to ensure she was getting proper child support? Because a lot of fraud exists where it's difficult for custodial parents to even determine what is the correct support amount.
I think part of the key is when you get that settlement agreement, have in there define what your rights are as far as getting documents and how often you're going to get them. Whether you're going to get tax returns every year, or whether you're going to get their general ledger or their bank accounts, or you're going to get a list of their cash disbursements on an annual basis, so that you can do your own work without having to necessarily fight to keep an eye as to what's going on in his company, so that you can make sure that cash flow and earnings are what he says they really are.
If you were evaluating a business and you were concerned about the owner of that business, what could you do to protect that business owner from exposing sensitive information about the business that could possibly destroy the business?
That's actually an excellent point, Jeff. And that's one of probably the biggest concerns in divorce, where the company owner is concerned about. One of the things I think is mandatory is to get a protective order with respect to the company, so that there would be no disclosure of sensitive information regarding the business. Additionally, you could further do the order such that any documents during the process that is turned over to the other expert or the attorney must be returned at the end of the case.
And if that doesn't occur, or if there's a protective order or injunctive relief, and the injunction or protective order, and a protective order actually is a form of an injunction, if it's violated, what are some of the things that can be done? And before you answer that, don't worry, Danielle, I'll start getting the calls. I know she's jumping up and down the way Tim O'Grady does, but I will get the callers on the air. But I just wanted to ask Mr. Richman this question: what happens if there's an injunction or a protective order and it's being violated and a business is being destroyed?
I think you have the question is, what are the damages that are being occurred to you? And many times you can quantify those damages and then go back after the other person. And I think the key is by starting at the beginning and making sure that before you distribute any information that there is a protective order in place, so that there is no excuse that we didn't know it was sensitive. You know, put it right out. I think your attorney has an obligation to protect you on that aspect.
Unfortunately, a lot of attorneys don't. I've worked in cases where injunctions should have been entered and they weren't, and I end up having to do a lot of damage control.
You're absolutely right, Jeff. I mean, this is an issue, and good attorneys like yourself that come in, these are the things that you notice right away, and the goal is to protect your client, and that's one of them.
Yeah. Now, we do have a bunch of callers on the line. Our first caller, the name appears to be Willie. Willie, or is it William? Welcome to Chicago Counterpoint with Jeffrey Leving and Bruce Richman.
Thank you. I'm actually calling. I have a question about parental rights. I currently have custody of my son. I've had him for the last 2 years. I had him since he was 2 days old. And I needed to know what proper channels or what proper steps I needed to take to have his mom's parental rights terminated, because we haven't seen her for the entire 2 years. I have no idea where she is or anything like that.
Well, you're bringing up an interesting question which ties into father's rights. If you call me, I'd be glad to talk to you about this, because I may have to ask some very sensitive questions that I may not ask on the air. My number is 312-795-9060. But there are ways to attempt to terminate parental rights. Obviously, we'd probably want to serve her first, so the court has personal jurisdiction to terminate her parental rights. But why don't you give me a call so we could discuss this in detail? And also, I'd be glad to send you a free copy of Father's Rights. It's hard-hitting and fair advice for every dad involved in a dispute. I wrote this book with Dr. Dockman. I'd be glad to send you a free copy, and I'd like to talk to you in detail about these issues, because if this mother has basically turned into and it sounds as if she's very negligent and malfeasant, and she doesn't even want to be a parent. So it doesn't seem that it would be difficult to terminate her parental rights, because she doesn't even seem to want to be a parent.
Correct.
Which is very unfortunate. But I have a close friend who was married to a woman, and she abandoned him and their children, and he raised those little boys all by himself, and he did a great job, and they're great children. I respect him for doing that, but things do occur that are unfortunate. But why don't you give me a call? I'll be glad to talk to you, and I'll also send you a free copy of Father's Rights. Our next